Hey, thanks for watching the Drawing for Adults class brought to you by the Ann Arbor Art Center and the Ann Arbor District Library. Today we are wrapping up part 2 of our facial features drawing. So last week we drew an eye very realistically, and then we began drawing a frontal view of a nose. So you just saw the eye there that we finished up last week, and here you can see the beginning stages of the nose. So if you didn't watch that, be sure to go back and get caught up, because today we are going to finish up with the noses as well as drawing some mouths. So get your pencil, your sheet of paper. If you drew, what we drew last week with the noses, it would be great to just kind of get caught up where you left off. So grab that drawing if you happen to have it. So like I was mentioning, last week we just started drawing the nose. So here I am working on some really subtle shading of drawing the frontal view of the nose. So you can see that in addition to drawing the nose, I'm also shading a little bit of the space around the nose. So that little shadow that's kind of like a little trapezoid under the nose, it's called the philtrum, and I have shaded that as well as on either side of the nostrils, just to help really show kind of how the space works with the nose and the shading around it, because the nose is tricky, and especially I would say for the frontal view, because it just makes it look kind of flat, so it can be really tricky. I think it comes together once you have the rest of the facial features. Once you draw the cheek and shade all that in, that's really helpful, but just the frontal view is a little bit, it looks okay. So anyway, so I am just adding in some shading there on the bridge of the nose, and then I'm going to go ahead and move on to the profile view of the nose. So you can see how here on the right I am just lightly sketching this in. Again, using a reference photo is going to be important, and I'm sorry I did not attach that here into this video, but you can look at your own nose if you've got a mirror nearby, or any photo reference really will be perfect. So as long as it's the right angle. So be really pay attention to the angles that you see. So if you're noticing that you've got it a little bit too curvy or whatever, look at the negative space, like what kind of shape is created on the outside of the nose, around the nose. Look at the distance between the nostril and the bridge of the nose. Those kinds of things will really help. So even though you're seeing this time-lapse video, and even though this is actually time-lapse, so this is a fast version and this seems like it's going kind of slow, note that that means that I spent a lot more time than what you're seeing right now actually sketching out and shading this nose. So keep that in mind as you're working to go slow. This is a fast-paced version of my drawing, okay? So you can see how I'm slowly adding in shading, making sure to leave my highlights. If you see highlights, don't overdo them. That little highlight next to the side of there of the nostril, for example, and the tip of the nose and near the bridge, all of those are going to be really key to getting a nice high contrast drawing. Now, this is my photo reference I'm using. The individual that I'm looking at does have a darker skin tone, so again I say that just to note that if you're seeing a lot of darker values being used in comparison to the previous nose, the frontal view nose, you can see a difference, right? Like there you can tell that it's a different skin tone. So I'm going to go ahead and move on now to the mouths. So you can see, especially with the one on the right, I rendered a little bit more of the cheeks and below the nose and between the nose and the mouth, just to be able to get a little bit more shading there, and I think that's going to be really helpful for us as we move forward. But I do want to still make sure I have time for everything, so I'm going to go ahead and move on. I'm moving on over here on the left side, and I'm sketching out just lightly the mouth. Now if you remember from other portrait drawings that classes that I've done, the edge of the mouth, the corners of the mouth should reach to about the center of the eyes. Now we don't see the eyes in this picture. In fact, I'm thinking that mouth looks a little small there. So, but I'm gonna end up going back and adding a little bit extra to the sides just to make it, yeah, reach to the middle, the center of the eyes. So, but notice the lips aren't always, it depends on the person, but the lips don't always go all the way to the corner of your mouth. So again, you can just look at yourself in the mirror, try not to smile or grin or do anything like that or frown. This is just kind of a blank stare kind of look here, but you can see how you know, the line, the lip line does go, it extends a little further than how full I have the lips, okay? So I'm spending a decent amount of time just really getting the shapes correct before I move on to shade, because I want to make sure that the shape is pretty accurate, okay? So notice how I'm making these minor adjustments, making some parts a little bit fuller, and then I'm going to go ahead and start doing a little bit of shading. Typically, your upper lip is going to be more in shadow than your bottom lip. And it's just the way, like, your nose is going to cast a bit of a shadow on that upper lip, and then your bottom lip typically sticks out a little bit further. It's just kind of the way that the position of the lips are. It seems always kind of odd, and we always want to put extra highlights where they don't belong and make things more shadowed. Now, typically right at the top there of the bottom lip, you will see a bit of a shadow that's being cast from the upper lip, but you will also see a decent amount of highlights there. And then there's also some shading underneath the bottom lip, under, like, not quite where the chin is, but just kind of that space between the mouth and the chin. So that's another important thing, because that helps make that bottom lip look even more dimensional by making sure you include that shadow. So that's why I'm not just drawing the nose, I'm not just drawing the mouth, I'm drawing a little bit of the space around these facial features, because it really helps accentuate the facial features that we are drawing. So it's difficult to really ignore those spaces. So you can also see here I've added in some little wrinkles, little cracks in the lips. You know, don't go too dark with those, otherwise it just looks like your person really needs some chapsticks or something. So you can see here to, you know, go light, really practice, sharpen your pencil if you need to make sure you can get a really nice fine line that doesn't look yeah, too deep, because you just don't want it to, also you don't want it to look like, I don't know, you've got tiger stripes or something like that happening on your mouth. Like, it should just look like the texture of lips and not like you are having some kind of pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to my portrait on the right side here. So you can see this is a different angle. This is a profile view, so I'm not going to have the same kind of thing happening. I'm going to have a a totally different perspective. So I'm drawing kind of just half of the mouth, really. You can see that the person is just slightly tilted, so that little highlight there under the nose, if you see that, that's the center of the philtrum, and so you can kind of see that it's not a perfect profile. I'm actually seeing a little bit of the other side of her mouth as well, but I'm gonna go ahead and do you know, a little bit of shading there under the mouth, and then I'm really paying attention to those shapes and you know, how far does the lip come out, is it past the nose, is it not past the nose? So you can see how I was drawing some lines there to help me gauge and you know, how big to make things, how angled, all of that, because it's tricky. So, and then I can start shading. So once I've got my shapes and lines in the right space, then, or in the right place, then I am good to go to start shading. So pay attention, don't overshade. Again, I want to have those subtle highlights where they should be, so don't overdo it, because it's so hard to pull out little highlights with your eraser once you've already shaded, especially if you're looking at a pretty small space. So again, I'm getting in the texture here of the lips. notice again how I've got the upper lip a little bit darker in terms of the shading. I am going pretty slow here, so don't rush the process. Again, you're seeing this as a time-lapse video, which means this is on super speed. So that's really super speed. I slowed it down a little bit so it's not too fast, but you know, it's definitely faster than the time that I took to draw this. So and then, you know, once you have everything shaded, feel free to continue working on this more and, you know, shading in the chin and the space around that. It's up to you how much further you want to do this, but I hope you've enjoyed this video series.